critical point as the Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has resigned amidst the escalating chaos. He's resigned from the post of Prime Minister as per Article 77 Clause 1 of the Nepalese Constitution with effect from today. He has stated that considering the current unusual situation in the country, he's done so for a constitutional and political outlet to resolve the problems that are being faced by the people of Nepal. Meanwhile, demonstrators have torched the residences of President Ram Chandra Paudel and Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. That's not all. Nepal's Supreme Court and Attorney General's office have been vandalized as well. The Parliament building was also set on fire. Meanwhile, government officials are being evacuated by helicopters from the Bhaispati ministerial quarters to the Tribhuvan International Airport, which is now been shut down. Protesters are meanwhile using social media to disrupt air traffic with fireworks, drones and laser lights causing delays. Up until now, only 2 flights have successfully taken off recently, while Himalaya and Air India flights await clearance. Meanwhile, we're learning that 2 Indigo flights bound for Kathmandu from Delhi and from Mumbai, they were en route to the airport but did not receive clearance to land, forcing a diversion to Lucknow in India. Now, after refueling, both flights will return to their origin cities as there are currently no operations to Kathmandu taking place today. Additionally, we are also learning that Yeti Airlines has cancelled all scheduled flights for today, citing the nationwide curfew, security concerns and escalating circumstances in the valley. We're also learning that Nepalese Finance Minister Bishnu Prasad Paudel has been attacked, and we do, as I mentioned before, know that Supreme Court, Attorney General's offices and the Parliament, they've all been vandalized. Meanwhile, at the India-Nepal border at Panitanki, the situation is quite serious. The border guards are on high alert as protests are showing no signs of abating. Meanwhile, we're seeing scenes of absolute jubilance. People are elated on the ground. They can be seen celebrating the news of the resignation of KP Sharma Oli. Several protesters are also reacting to the updates coming in. Take a look.
So the Prime Minister, he has resigned after a violent protest for 2 days. So what is your reaction on it?
It is very good for our country. Now I think like us youth will stand and will develop the country.
So how do you take the action of KP Sharma Oli using the force on the students who were on the street yesterday?
Terrible, terrible. That's very wrong. That's very wrong. That was really violent.
So do you think the protest which started from yesterday made him step down from the post?
Yes, I think. Yes.
So the Prime Minister, he has resigned after a violent protest for 2 days. So what is your reaction on it?
It is very good for our country. Now I think like us youth will stand and will develop the country.
So how do you take the action of KP Sharma Oli using the force on the students who were on the street yesterday?
Terrible, terrible. That's very wrong. That's very wrong. That was really violent.
So do you think the protest which started from yesterday made him step down from the post?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
All right, there of course you've heard what the protesters have had to say, and just take a look at these visuals that are coming in from Nepal. You can see people, of course, celebrating on the streets. They were out protesting ever since yesterday. The protests had escalated to the point where tear gas shells were fired, water cannons were being used as well. That is not all. In fact, 20 protesters are said to have lost their lives, with scenes of utter elation. People can be seen smiling on the ground. With us on the broadcast is Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, International Relations and Defence expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Some high-octane developments have been taking place in Nepal. Their Prime Minister, KP Sharma Oli, has now tendered his resignation in light of the violence we've witnessed recently. Now, in your opinion, the protests that we've seen rage, especially over the social media ban, Was this something sudden, or has discontent been brewing amongst the people of Nepal for a while?
Absolutely, what you are saying is absolutely correct. This was one of the reasons. In fact, it was a spark point. Discontentment was already there among the youth because of unemployment, because of corruption and other issues. So it was just a nail on the coffin when this thing was, the social media was banned. That is the time when the protesters started. And I think it is the right move which Prime Minister Oli has taken, that he has resigned, because he was advised by the army that as long as you are the Prime Minister, things are not going to come under control. So as a result of the advice from the Chief of the Army Staff, he has resigned, and now hopefully the students will realize that whatever has happened because the social media ban has been lifted. So I think it will be in the interest of the students also and the interest of the country that they'll go back to their homes and let the president and the army decides what they have to do in the future. Yeah.
Indeed, we also have with us on the broadcast Ms. Shruti Das Gupta, international affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Ma'am, what is your assessment of what exactly has taken place? All right, there seems to be a connectivity issue as far as Ms. Das Gupta's connection is concerned, but just take a look at those visuals. I'd like to take a moment to walk our viewers through what you can see. That, of course, is Prime Minister Oli's residence. He's now tendered his resignation. It has completely been destroyed. You can see plumes of smoke rising up to the air. It's completely been torched. I believe Ms. Shruti Das Gupta is back with us on the broadcast. Ma'am, if you can hear me this time around, I was asking you, what is your assessment of the situation on the ground? What next for Nepal? And how should New Delhi approach what is taking place beyond the border?
Greetings. Thank you so much for inviting me. Nepal is burning, as you've just mentioned. The students have taken onto the streets. Gen Z is burning up houses of people. So this is more than just an agitation against social media, as many of your panelists have noted before me, and the other news media channels are saying. What the problem is that there is a 19% unemployment rate, and when you take away social media away from it, Nepal has already been simmering in the fumes of pro-monarchy protests, anti-communism protests. They have been protesting against the lives of Nepo kids. I believe the Nepo kids trend actually originated from Philippines, and it has come to Nepal as well, where the politicians' children were showing off their larger-than-life luxury lifestyles on TikTok videos and other places. And the people on ground were fuming because their taxes were paying for the luxury of these particular kids. So this is exactly what fueled for. What I see coming for Nepal is probably because there is a large faction of pro-Hindu, pro-monarchy people that are part of this Gen Z protest. So I do believe that the king would be welcomed back with both hands, but the democracy will continue to stay. So he'll probably be a statutory head of a government, like probably what we see in UK. So he will find his place again in monarchy to provide the civilizational context to whatever is happening in Nepal and has been its part of its history. And then we'll see a pro-Hindu and pro-monarchy faction develop itself into a political party that is now probably going to see elections, because 21 of its members, Nepal's parliament have resigned, cabinet members have resigned, PM Oli has resigned. So this is going to lead to a dissolution of the parliament, a new fresh elections probably, and in this we'll see new faces, because all the older ones from 2008 to now, 13 different governments have been sworn in. Basically, every 2 or 3 years, we're seeing a new face come forth, run the same scheme on people and find out that it is not really working. And then we go back into the cycle of abuse where unemployment stays, people on the ground stay poor, and the politicians and their families and their cronies benefit. So this time around, a new fresh face would probably emerge from these riots. At least that's what is my opinion of the situation.
All right, I'd like to thank Colonel Sirohi, and I request Ms. Dasgupta to stay on with us. Meanwhile, breaking news coming in, there's a joint statement that has been issued by the embassies of Australia, Finland, France, Japan and the Republic of Korea, as well as the United Kingdom, Norway, Germany and the United States of America. This is over the protests that have taken place in Nepal. The statement reads that these countries are deeply saddened by the violence seen in Kathmandu and elsewhere in Nepal, including the tragic loss of life and injury during demonstrations. All these countries have extended their sincere condolences to the families of the victims, all those affected, and wish all those injured a swift and full recovery. They have reaffirmed their strong support for the universal rights of peaceful assembly and freedom of expression, and have urged all parties to exercise maximum restraint, avoiding further escalation and ensuring that these fundamental rights are protected. Still with us on the broadcast is Ms. Shruti Dasgupta. Ma'am, how do you react to the statement coming in? We've seen another statement earlier in the day by the United Nations. A very similar tone and tenor has been used. The UN, in fact, pointed out the fact that Nepal is a vibrant democracy, but the overall tone as far as condoling the loss of lives and of course pointing towards safeguarding universal human rights, that remains the same.
That is the tone on any protest that goes violent. So I don't find anything unusual when these statements come forth from all factions that please protect human life. Let this not turn into them against us kind of a conflict where the state machinery uses arms, pistols, guns, or whatever else is at their disposal to quieten down dissenting voices. But the social media ban also kind of highlighted one of the facts that if I don't know whether you are whether any of your panelists have mentioned this or not, but the registration that they wanted these 26 apps to go through, a part of that registration was saying that the government will control what is going to be put out on those platforms in Nepal, and any content found not in consonance with what the government wants to project to its people, they were at liberty to remove indiscriminately, and the platforms had to comply. This was one of the major reasons why the people are there on the streets, because their only way of making their voice heard was being suppressed. And this is one of the reasons why all these nations have come forth and said that peaceful assembly, peaceful dissent should be permitted. And this is what was the Oli government's problem. They also instituted a similar ban against TikTok, which is right now, I think, working. Of course, right now the ban has been lifted on all of them. But before the ban, TikTok was not part of the 26 apps ban. And TikTok was earlier banned a year back. And their particular clause for working within Nepal was that they would allow Nepal's tourism government to showcase Nepal in the best possible light. So again, control of what the media puts out, social media puts out by the Oli governments and the other Nepalese governments is what was being seen through all these legislations. So although the world hopes for better, right now the situation, I believe, remains to be very, very, very incendiary.
Absolutely, ma'am. I request you to stay on with us. Meanwhile, we're shifting our focus away from Nepal towards what's taking place as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. We're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on the European Union and the United States to take stronger action against continued Russian attacks targeting civilians. The urgency comes after a Russian strike on the Donetsk region that has claimed the lives of 20 people, worsening the humanitarian crisis. Zelensky has in fact warned that more international support is needed in order to protect Ukrainian citizens and hold Russia accountable for violence. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Ukrainian Defense Minister. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us on NewsX. Fresh appeal being made by Volodymyr Zelensky. It's not just the United States, but also EU powers who have been called on to take stringent action against Russia, especially in light of the recent attacks that have taken place against civilians, taking into consideration the recent strikes that have taken place in Donetsk. We've seen attacks earlier against civilians in Kiev as well, the overnight strike that in fact hit one of the government buildings in Kiev as well. So in light of this, how should, in your assessment, the United States and the EU progress, because it does not seem that Putin is backing down?
Well, I mean, it's very clear that Putin isn't backing down and isn't going to back down. And as I've said many times, the problem with the US is that they're supporting Russia. They're not supporting Ukraine. And that makes it very difficult to even think about what US could or might do. We can always wait for a game-changing moment from Trump, but I don't see it happening in a hurry. Europe has got to wake up, because this whole thing is moving more and more towards the next stage where Europe will be involved in fighting. And they don't seem to understand this at all. And they're talking about peace and what we're going to do after peace. And yesterday, the Italian foreign minister basically said, we're not going to put troops on the ground. We're not going to do anything. But Ukraine deserves an Article 5 type agreement. But he doesn't want to be. They don't want to be involved in it. And this is the way Europe is at the moment. Talk, but no real action.
All right, and we are getting more news. Mr. Grant, I request you to stay on with us. We're now learning that Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has stated that no sanctions can force Russia to change its stance on Ukraine. His comments come as the European Union and the US have discussed new sanctions amid stalled peace talks. US President Donald Trump has indicated that the White House is ready to launch a second phase of sanctions against Russia. Peskov has meanwhile called previous Western sanctions as useless and has stated that the restrictions over recent years has had no effect. He's added that Russia remains committed to aligning with peace efforts that are being put forth by the United States of America and hopes that talks will continue constructively. However, he's also stressed that Russia will maintain its military operation until a diplomatic solution ensures the country's security. Moscow will closely monitor Washington's statements on any new sanctions. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant. We've of course been discussing the possibility of Donald Trump imposing these sanctions in the first place or not, but a very clear reaction coming in from the Kremlin, Russia putting its foot down, stating that it will not change its stance as far as Ukraine is concerned, but at the same time it's left the door open for discussion with US officials. Trump has been mooting a trilateral, but Russia now seemingly making it clear that it will only speak to the American counterparts. Will any sort of conversation really hold merit if Ukraine is not on the negotiating table?
Well, no. I mean, Russia only wants to talk to America because they're the only ones that actually treat them as in a human fashion, because they're supporting Russia. But the fact that the Kremlin has actually said that that the sanctions haven't had any effect means they have had an effect, and this is obviously because they always lie. So therefore, we know that they have had an effect, and possibly it is time for America to actually to step up and actually put some serious sanctions on the financial sector and key people in Russia to pressurize them. I mean, there are things that would work, like stopping the airlines working, which would damage Russia's effectiveness considerably. But nobody seems to want to do things that actually have any great effect. So we wait and see.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World as we track these very delicate developments. Meanwhile, viewers, shifting focus towards South Korea. We're now learning that South Korean activists have gathered in front of the US Embassy in Seoul to protest against the recent arrests that were made by the US Immigration Authority at a Hyundai plant in Georgia. Protesters have condemned the immigration raids Let's in fact listen in as a South Korean lawyer points out human rights violations that have taken place.
노동자들을 수갑과 족쇄에 채워 끌고 갔습니다. 이것은 명백한 인권 침해입니다. 국제인권 기준에도 반합니다.
Remember, during the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid, there were about 300 South Koreans who were arrested along with 175 others at the site of the Hyundai and Energy project in Atlanta. Now, this raid is the largest single site enforcement operation in the history of the Department of Homeland Security's investigative operations. We do remember seeing those visuals of these South Korean nationals being chained. Their hands were bound, their feet were bound, their waists were chained, as well as they were dragged along by the ICE officials. Now, activists have stated that this operation targeting South Korean workers has a certain political message. Listen in.
한미 동맹을 강화하고 투자를 계속 촉진하려고 미국 측에서 계속 한국 측을 압박해 왔지 않습니까? 그런데 한편에서는 한국인 노동자들을 대상으로 해서 단속했다는 것은 일정 부분 정치적 메시지가 있지 않나 생각합니다. 극우, 흔히 말하는 어떤 미국 우선주의의 목소리를 높이는 사람들에게 호응하기 위해서 이런 액션이 취해졌다고 보고 저희가 그런 측면에서 미 대사관 앞에서.
Alright, more news coming in. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has in fact offered his sympathy and stated that Seoul will negotiate with Washington to reach a reasonable solution to this particular situation. In fact, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is in Washington for these negotiations. Meanwhile, Korean Air has announced that South Korea will send a chartered plane to Atlanta to bring back the detained workers. All right, viewers, shifting focus to more updates. The counselor to the President of the United States, Peter Navarro, has claimed that India's interest is interfering with the buying of Russian oil. Navarro has slammed India by stating that India has the largest population in the world and all it can do is manage a few 100,000 propagandists around the polls, and it is too funny for him that Indians use their social media platforms to advance Indian agendas. Listen in.
Well, let's see how this is going to work out. Let's see, okay, Russia getting into bed with China. China claims they own Vladivostok, the Russian port, and they're already through massive illegal immigration into Siberia, basically colonizing Siberia, which is the biggest landmass of the Russian semi-empire. So good luck with that, Putin. And then India, of course, has been at war with China for decades. I just remembered, yeah, it was China that gave Pakistan a nuclear bomb. You got ships flying around the Indian Ocean now with Chinese flags. Modi, see how you kind of work that out. And meanwhile, the Brazil economy is going down the tubes because of Lula's socialist policies. Well, they keep the real leader of that country in a cell. So let's see what happens. But the bottom line is none of these countries can survive if they don't sell to the United States. And when they sell to the United States, their exports, they're like vampires sucking our blood dry with their unfair trade practices. So, look, let's see what happens. But I don't see how the BRIC alliance stays together since historically they all hate each other and kill each other.
All right, there, of course, Peter Navarro, Trump's trade advisor, clearly irked by the extraordinary BRIC summit that was held yesterday, India's role as well. And we do see how the rhetoric of the Trump administration at large has toned down, but Navarro is continuing his tirade against India. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Shruti Dasgupta, international affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Ma'am, we've seen over the last couple of days Navarro make a lot of posts on social media. He's been fact-checked numerous times on X particularly, which allows for community notes. Then he went on to claim that Elon Musk is allowing false propaganda against his claims. Then he held a poll after that as well, and Indians voted in large numbers. So he's come out yet again and gone on another rant against India. This time he's pointed out towards the sort of rivalry between India and China. He's pointed out towards Pakistan's nukes, the growing Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean as major fault lines. What is your response to the claims that he's making, the fact that he continues to double down despite the President of the United States, Donald Trump himself, toning down his rhetoric?
Well, Navarro is a classic example of a man where gray hair doesn't prove maturity. He is barking up the wrong tree if he's trying to tell mature democracies like India, Russia, and China how to balance out their mutual interests, whether it is in terms of regional security or trade. So he is talking down to us. If he wants to bring up all those examples, maybe India should also try and point out how the Americans were helping Pakistan during the 1971 war and how Russia came to our rescue. So there are more than one players involved in ensuring that the balance of power always gets tilted towards the US or China or Russia side. So India has, of course, has its own place. We are a developing nation. We are rushing towards becoming the world's third largest economy, probably by the end of next year, if possible. But his claim that all these economies would probably die is something which doesn't kind of hold much water. Without USA, what would happen to USA if China stops exporting to them? Or what would happen to it if if they don't have India's market for their software products? They make large amount of money just by their software platforms, including the ones like YouTube and X and Facebook and all the others, where they promote ads. So they make large amounts of money from India and its population to mock the world's largest democracy. To mock India is to basically invite trouble at your doorstep, which is already knocking, which is why he's restricted who can answer to his boss. And he's basically trying to hide behind a door and tell the larger fighter, see if you can get through the door and see if you can hit me. Why would he need to engage with the Indian public? If he's an advisor, he should consider policies in a more balanced fashion. Why are we the vampires and America not? Why are these nations considered vampires when America is controlling a lot of the tech? It's trying to define who buys oil from who buys military equipment from whom, how far long should the Israel-Gaza war function, who sells to Ukraine, and who buys those equipments, and which arms lobby gets to sell its equipment to Ukraine. So America is allowed to prey on other nations, and when any retaliatory action or self-preservation actions happen, they want to talk about morals and ethics and supremacy of their own values. So it's kind of funny. I don't think we should take him too seriously. His job is to rattle cages, and that is exactly what he's doing. Any more response to him is giving him more airtime than he's actually worth.
All right, ma'am. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. One last piece of breaking news coming in from Nepal. Latest developments coming in. The Nepalese President Ramchandra Paudel has accepted the resignation of Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. The President's aide has stated that President Paudel has already begun the process for a new leader's election. With that, viewers, we will continue to track more news and updates, but due to paucity of time, we must wrap up this bulletin here. More stories on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.